Hello and welcome to Bev's Talks. I'm Bev Short and I'm your host. Now, some of you may know that in a previous lifetime, I was a professional photographer. But I can't say, unfortunately, that any of my photographs became so famous that they could feature in Time Life's book, 100 Photos That Changed the World. But the photographs that were taken in 1967 of my guest today are. I'm thrilled to introduce you to a woman who has been one of the top stories in world news recently, Kathrine Switzer. Now, Kathrine was the first woman to register and run in the Boston Marathon in 1967. And she came back on the 17th of April this year, 50 years on, to do it again at the age of 70. And she did it nearly as fast as she did when she was 20. So welcome, Kathrine. It's just so wonderful to have you on.
Oh, great, Bev. It's wonderful to be here. Wonderful to see you again. You look great, by the way.
Well, thank you. And so do you. I have to say, you look amazing. Absolutely.
Well, I must tell you, I just got in from a run and a shower, so I am a little tired looking, but I'm very ecstatic. I'm very, very happy. Boston's behind me. We'll talk about that. But it was an amazing, amazing experience.
Yeah. So Kathrine and I have known each other for a few years since she kindly agreed to take part in my All Woman project, where I photographed extraordinary women and wrote their stories. So I think we've known each other for about 6 years now, Kathrine. So you are a huge inspiration to me, and I know that you are an inspiration to literally hundreds of thousands of women all over the world. So I want you to, first of all, congratulations on your Boston Marathon run. That was amazing. And can you tell everybody really why this 50th anniversary was so special?
I will, but you know what? I'm going to say something at the beginning here, which is, in a former life, you said you were a photographer. You're still a beautiful photographer. And I have to say that Bev Short made the most gorgeous portrait of me I have ever seen. And this portrait was, along with of others of women, actually hung in New Zealand's National Portrait Gallery in a special exhibition. And it was one of my proudest moments when people came up to me and said, I saw your beautiful portrait. And I was in a gown, I was gorgeous on a cliff. The wind was blowing my gown. Totally different from running. And people would talk about the portrait rather than about me running the Boston Marathon. So it was a wonderful departure for me. Yeah, and I treasure this picture. Now, of course, we're going to get 1 million requests for this, and you're going to have to show that sometime.
You're not supposed to be plugging me at the moment, Kathrine. You're supposed to be talking about you and all the amazing things that you've done.
Well, I don't know. Maybe you can license the portrait or something. I don't know. Put a copyright on it or something. I don't know, Bev. But it's magnificent. Honestly, it's one of those fantasy moments when you really look good. She had a professional photographer come, makeup artist come and do me. It was really great. Okay, let's talk about the Boston Marathon. Of course, it is 42.2 kilometers, 26 miles, 385 yards. It's a long race. And I'll tell you the truth, I was extremely nervous about it because, uncharacteristically for me, about 3 years ago, I announced that I was going to do this. And usually I don't ever throw something that enormous out that much in advance because things happen in your life. And the marathon itself is a very long race and anything can happen in the race. But I needed to do this because I really wanted to launch in a very big way my foundation, which is 261 Fearless, named after the bib number that I first wore in the 1967 Boston Marathon. And I knew I had to put it out there to begin generating the story. So, of course, by the time 3 years on that the race actually came about, my heart was popping out of my chest because there was this expectation, huge amount of pressure and expectation of me, and leading into it in particular the last 3 months, 3 weeks, and then 4 days out, the media came in like an avalanche. Right. Now, isn't that great that there is so much media? Well, yes, but when Thursday when I arrived in Boston before the marathon on Monday, I had 22 interviews in one day for instance.
And I would just like to say, one of my proudest emails that I received recently was when Kathrine said, I blew off the BBC for you, Bev. So I'm just really chuffed about that.
Yeah, well, you're getting up there, Bev. I'll tell you what. Okay, so I'm being very honest with our viewers and listeners today, which was, it is a mighty thing in business when you can announce something like that and live up to the expectation, but you always run the risk of not. And I said to my husband, the night before the race, I said, people are going to remember me a lot more for not finishing this race than if I do finish this race. And he said, oh, quit talking about that, get on with it. And I said, I will, but I'm tired and anything can happen. Well, what can I tell you? The gods were with me. Honestly, I think in exercise, as you know, because you're also a professional in the world of fitness, exercise, and good health, that I was wound up like a clock. And I just had to get out of that. And the only way that I can really free myself from that kind of stress of feeling totally frazzled and put upon is to run. And basically, once the race began, I was into it, and it came to me, and every kilometer got better and better and better and better. And what an experience it was. I mean, you compare it to 50 years ago when there were like 700 people in the race and it was considered a big deal, but it was a cold and freezing day and there was nobody out spectating. And plus, I had been pilloried in the race by the race director and attacked, and everybody wanted me to quit and prove that women couldn't do this. I did finish, of course, in 67, but this time, Bev, if you can imagine, hundreds of people were out with these big signs holding it up, said, go 261 fearless, go Kathrine, yay. And when I went by, they would still be cheering, go for 261 fearless. And then they would realize it was me who actually went by. Yeah. And they go, oh my God, that's her with my camera.
So can you tell people, because there's some people in the world, Kathrine, who don't know you, all right? So can you tell them exactly what happened in 1967? Why this is such a big deal 50 years later?
Yeah, here's the thing, is that 50 years ago, women were not allowed in the Boston Marathon, but it was not a rule that was written anywhere. It was a custom. And so when I trained with my coach and wanted to run the Boston Marathon, he didn't believe any woman could do it. And that's why these customs existed. People believed 50 years ago, if a woman did anything arduous, she was going to get big legs and grow hair on her chest and her uterus was going to fall out and all of these myths. Well, I disproved those in practice. My coach was very proud of me, helped me just sign up for the race. And I said, is this against the rules? He said, no, we went through the rule book. And he said, other women haven't done it because they're afraid to do it. And I said, well, other women have done it, but they didn't wear numbers. And he said, well, then that's wrong, because you should sign up for a big race like this.
Because I remember you telling me that a lot of women wouldn't actually officially register or start at the starting point. They would sort of hide in the bushes along the street and jump into the crowd of runners and then run. And nobody would ever really know that they were doing it, but they were too scared, weren't they, to register?
Well, either they were too scared to register, or they knew that if they did try to register, that their entry would be rejected.
Yeah.
And I signed, here's the coincidence of the story, is that I signed my name Kathrine Switzer with my initials. So the officials obviously thought I was a guy. Okay, the myth prevails that, she did it intentionally. I did not do it intentionally, but it was an amazing coincidence, because if I had signed Kathrine Switzer, they probably would have pulled or rejected my entry. Okay, so who knows? Hey, listen, I wrote Kathrine Switzer because that's the way I signed my name, but I did not go up and say, woo-hoo, I'm a girl, Yeah. I just wanted to go and run, put my head down and run. I wasn't there to prove anything. I was only 20. I was a student. Anyway, I went up to Boston from Syracuse University here in the United States, ran the race with my coach and my teammates, including my boyfriend, who was a ex-All-American football player. So he's a very big guy, gridiron football player. And the officials didn't see that I was a woman at the start because it was snowing and sleeting. We were all in baggy gray sweatsuits. Now, all the guys knew I was a woman, and they were all saying, I wish my wife would run. I wish my girlfriend would run. They were really great. Male runners have always been wonderful, terrific. And so down the street we went, and then a mile or so into the race director was on the press truck, and he jumped off the press truck in an absolute temper tantrum, absolute rage that there was a girl in his race wearing a bib number. and chased me down the street and attacked me and tried to pull off the bib number. My coach was screaming, the guys are screaming. My boyfriend threw a shoulder charge into the official and sent him out of the race instead. And I went on to finish. So this is a funny story in the retelling, because I see a little smile creeping across your face, Beth.
I'm always smiling, Kathrine. I'm actually smiling at the moment because the dog is starting to have a nightmare in the corner, and I'm thinking, oh my God, the sound. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah. Anyway, I went on and finished, but it was a pivotal moment in my life, really, because I suddenly had run the race originally just to run. Now it was political. I had to finish to prove that women could do it, deserved to be there. And shout down all the naysayers. Well, it's a big burden on a 20-year-old, but I did it. And I often say if I had quit, it would have set women really, really far back. As it was, it challenged this rule, so-called rule, and it threw the whole race into controversy. And I was suspended from the athletic federation. I was disqualified from the race, but I kept going back to Boston to run along with other women until finally we mounted a major campaign and got women official. It took us 5 years, but we did do it. And then that opened another yet career path for me, which was creating global running events for women. Which I did for most of my life, getting events in 27 countries for over 1 million women with 400 events, which eventually led to getting the women's marathon into the Olympic Games. So I love telling the story about the angry official because sometimes the worst things in your life can become the best things in your life. It gave me, although it was bad, it gave me inspiration and it gave me determination to find resolution for this. And the resolution was quite simple, which was give women an opportunity and they will take the opportunity and they will empower themselves and they will change history. And I knew it was going to be as simple as organizing events where women were welcome, were not intimidated, and were given the ability to run and to be joyful and to have this a sense of self-esteem. Yeah. So that's what came from that, and it created a 50-year career not only in race management, race organization, race advocacy, and activism, but then in book writing, television commentary. I went on to do the television commentary of the Boston Marathon for 37 consecutive years. I ran it 8 times and then started doing broadcasting. But I always stayed in shape. So that, 3 years ago, I said, well, golly, I'm in pretty good shape. Wouldn't it be fantastic to run the marathon again on the 50th anniversary? No woman has ever done that. Women have run when they're in their 70s or 80s or even 90s, but no woman has ever run a marathon 50 years after she ran her first one. And so I said, that's really testimony to health and fitness and belief in women, regardless of your age. And it was to be a celebration of what we've accomplished, which when you look at the statistics, 58% of all the runners in the United States now are women. And it's bigger in Canada. It's also that's the same stat about in France and also Japan, which is really remarkable. And also the fact that Boston itself, which is a difficult qualifying race, is almost 50-50 men and women now. So to be a part of that revolution, to celebrate it has been enormous. And that's what the first part of what my anniversary run was all about. The second part of it was to celebrate that 50 years, but let's look ahead at the next 50 years and to pass this torch, if you will, on to the next generation of women who are going to be changing lives in places that I haven't been able yet to touch. And we did this through this passing of the torch, through the creation of my foundation, which is called 261 Fearless, which is named after that old bib number that the official tried to pull off of me. Yeah. And that number has become, in the last few years, a number meaning fearless in the face of adversity. And women have been wearing it and tattooing it, if you can imagine it. And we decided if we created a foundation, we could create clubs and community runs, a powerful communications vehicle to reach women who have no opportunities whatsoever. Women in particular, but I say women in particular because they have less opportunities in general. And most of the women, I'm sorry to say, live in a fearful situation in the world, most. Mm-hmm. And we live very privileged lives, those of us who are watching this podcast, because we even have access to an internet, all right? Mm-hmm. But most women live in a fearful situation. And if we can reach them through something that is empowering and simple and cheap and accessible, like running, putting one foot in front of the other, we can really empower them and change the world. We've done it already in many places. You look at Kenya and Ethiopia, what it's done. Look at Japan, what it's done. Brazil, amazing change just through this simple act of running. Just imagine if we could crack the Mideast and places where women have a lot of poverty. And I often say that the woman we're trying to reach may be in Afghanistan, or she may be your next door neighbor, because fearful lives don't necessarily mean that you're impoverished. It means that you cannot have an opportunity for whatever reason you are restricted. So we can break that restriction. That's what we hope to do with 261 Fearless. So that was the deal in Boston.
Right. Okay. But, those photographs that were taken, because it was, if you hadn't been right behind the press truck, and it was Jock, wasn't it? It was called Jock that tried to pull you out of the race. If you hadn't done that, you would never have had the opportunity that you did have to create that catalyst to make things happen. You really had worldwide notoriety overnight at the age of 20. Is that right? Age of 20?
Yeah.
So young, yet you decided to turn that around into something really, really positive and really, really help women. So, that is truly amazing. So what changes have you seen in not just in running, but over the past 50 years for women, things that women are now more allowed to do, and how women maybe perceive themselves and what they feel that they're capable of that, say, 50 years ago, they wouldn't have?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that question, but I want to go back to the photograph.
Okay.
Because you as a photographer, and we all find this fascinating, because that photograph became a mythic photograph.
Yeah.
And indeed, it was a very powerful vehicle for me to have in my back pocket. When people realized that I was really still alive, I was a person, I had been an activist, and that was me in the picture. And it gets recycled even now more than ever. And as you say, it's in Time Life's book, 100 Photos That Changed the World. But here's the point, Bev, is that I could have just walked away from it and done nothing with it. And also, I might not have had a photograph. And people would have put this down as something that took place in history, but I still would have been changed by the experience, even if it hadn't been a photograph. And I still know I would have been an activist, but maybe I wouldn't have had the huge success I've had in making change that the photograph gave me. That's for sure. That's for sure. So that's amazing. Now, what kind of changes have I seen? Everything. I have seen women who embrace running on a personal level, let's say, write to me and say, I can't tell you, thank you enough for creating this event or writing your book or meeting you. You inspire me, and I started running, and I never believed it could do the things it did. And suddenly I realized that I really count. I am somebody, and I've left an abusive relationship. I've gotten my kids back from custody. I went off and I said, why am I having this cruddy job? I'll get a better education. They get a better education. They get the skill sets they need. They get better jobs. They go up the corporate ladder, or they create a new business. They become entrepreneurs. Hundreds of letters like this. That is extremely validating. And when you get them from a foreign country, and I remember when I was organizing races in Brazil, for instance, that these women had never had an opportunity like this. So, I'll never forget the federation there telling me many years ago that the race wasn't going to be successful because women in our country are feminine and wouldn't run. and I mean, in Brazil, of all places, where the women they are ultra feminine, but they're heavy into like beach volleyball and everything. So I said, no, they're going to love this. He said, you'll probably have about 100 women show up for your race. Well, we had 10,000 women.
Wow.
And you say, oh my God, that's just amazing. Here's the point, though. There are a lot of those women who didn't have shoes. And I don't mean Nikes or Adidas.
No.
I mean shoes. And if you're so poor you don't have a pair of shoes, and then somebody gives you an opportunity to take to the streets and get a T-shirt and get a medal and tells you are somebody, it clicks. You say, I am somebody. And to get letters from those women, who said, you don't remember me, but 5 years ago I did this race, and I realized I was going nowhere in the world unless I got an education, and I really did. I went and got an education, learned to read and write, and now I have a job and I'm earning money and I'm taking care of my family. We're no longer living in a cardboard box. I mean, come on. This is phenomenal when you get that letter. It's really great.
So tell us about the bib. So 261 obviously is an extremely sort of famous and powerful number, to the point where people are, putting it on when they go into runs, when it's not even the number, they're tattooing it on themselves, whatever it may be. So what's happened to your bib now? Because I know since the Boston Marathon, they've retired it. Now, I don't really understand what retiring a bib means. So can you tell me?
Yeah, this was a huge honor in American gridiron football and our basketball, and I don't know if they do that in New Zealand or in Scotland. I think they do. I think they do in the UK with soccer, with football. When there's a very famous player like Pele or somebody, they retire their number, meaning that was always Pele's number, or that was always some great footballer's number. At my university, they retired the number 44, which was the number for a very famous footballer named Floyd Little. And that became like the cult number. That means nobody else can have it. And for me to have it retired, the first time this has happened in running, obviously you can't retire bib number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 because you got to number the entrants in the race. Yeah. But because that particular number is so identified with me, and the incident and the thing that changed history, they retired it in a wonderful ceremony in Boston the day after the race, which was great fun because we thought it was going to be a quiet little thing that was going to happen at the Adidas Run Base Museum store, which is right near the finish line, and nobody could get through the street. I mean, 1,000 people must have showed up, and there was lights and cameras everywhere. And I said this then, and I'll say it now, which is, I'm delighted this has happened, not for my ego at all, but because 261 is now more important than I am, which is precisely what I wanted this Boston Marathon to be about. I want now this legacy to move to the next 50 years through my vehicle, the vehicle of my foundation, 261 Fearless. Now people will know what that bib number means, 261. But you know what? It's framed in there. The museum is going to be also framed in the museum in Herzog, which is outside of Munich, the head office for Adidas. And they've already taken my shoes. Great. Which is this is another cool story. I mean, I had Adidas on my feet 50 years ago, and I had them on my feet again last Monday, which was terrific.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about the organization. I mean, you called it 261 Fearless because, everybody started writing to you and sending you pictures, and you understood the significance of that number. So why did you start it, and what's it all about?
Boy, that's a good question, Bev, because we started it only 3 years ago do we start it. And only 2 years ago did it become a 501c3, an official nonprofit. And we have had absolutely no money. So we've been working for 2 years, but now people have raised money, a lot of money for it, which is really, really spectacular. Come to that in a moment. But what we did is we sat down and said, we've got to do something with this feedback we're getting on 261. It was just coming across the transom, hundreds of letters from people not even related to each other. So I'd get a letter from Paraguay or from the Basque Country in Spain or from Japan and then from Chicago, all saying the same thing. And they were relating to the story, Bev, about being told that they're not welcome or not good enough. or that they're not pretty enough, or they're the wrong race or religion, and they're too fat, they can't do it anyway. You know, all those things that they'd been told all their lives. And then they go and run and they feel that sense of fearlessness. Mm-hmm. So that's why they kept using the same word. And so we said, okay, we'll create a nonprofit. You could create a business, you could create a brand, whatever you wanted, but you got to create something. And we created a nonprofit. And I put my head in my hands. I said, oh my God. I said to my team, I said, I am too old for another revolution. At which point they said, no, you're not. You're really young.
Well, you obviously aren't, because you're still doing it.
Yeah. So off we went with this. And they're a young and eager team at the top of their game, in their 40s, looking for a legacy, which is perfect. I felt I'd already had a pretty good legacy with getting the women's marathon in the Olympic Games. But this could be bigger than, and this will be bigger than anything. And it won't reach fruition until I'm gone from the face of the earth, probably, which is the way, you know, a major movement probably should be. But basically what it is we're creating a non-judgmental community of women, where women come together and do what they do best, which is talk together, communicate, and if they do it this particular time with running and walking together. And it's not about elite training. It's not about getting faster. It's about taking that 1 hour or 2 hours a week together just to let everything else go and relate to each other. And we are doing this through a series of community clubs. That's the main heart and soul of this, in creating those community clubs in cultures where the women themselves do it. We don't go in there like know-it-alls and say, this is what you should do. But we do have a specific training course to show the leader how to create a non-judgmental community of women. This is not, you know, you, Bev Short, being queen bee and know-it-all. This is like somebody who knows how to bring the best out of these women, and let them find their own fearless. Essentially, we fearless women are helping women who are fearful find their fearless and be full of self-esteem. Running and walking work because it's easy, cheap, accessible. And in countries where women can't go out of the house alone, hopefully they can run in place. They can get together with their group inside of a place. Maybe if they're lucky enough, they have a treadmill, or they can run virtually. I mean, that sounds far-fetched, but basically we now have the power of the internet, and these women are communicating through our website, which is very strong. 261fearless.org. They join, and then we even have a safe portal where they can communicate safely with each other. So that's very powerful. Sometimes you just need to know in life you're not alone out there.
I know.
Well, you know, and also we're going to have.
Oh, sorry, carry on. Go ahead.
No. We'll have events. We're going to have merchandising. You know, this, but basically, it's the communication and it's the club network that is so important.
And I mean, what you always said to me right from the start when I met you a few years ago was, you always said it's not about the running.
Yeah.
It's never about the running.
Yeah.
You know? So tell everybody what it is about, you know, I mean, I understand it. I get it. Yeah. But it's not about the running.
No. Well, you get it also because you are a professional coach and trainer also of women, to let them realize that it's not about losing weight. It's not just about the nutrition. It's not about even doing the exercises. It's about them taking control of their own life. And that to me is what fearless is. Fearless is the ability to make a decision in the face of adversity and to control your own life, to make that decision to control your own life. It's not easy. Many women are in situations socially and culturally where they have no real life of their own. So it's going to be a big leap for them. But running is very innocent, you know. You put one foot in front of the other, nobody seems to pay attention, but it gives you a transformational experience. And we've seen it again and again and again, that 20 minutes in the morning or a 2-hour run, if you're lucky enough, just completely changes your whole way of thinking.
Yeah.
And it sounds crazy, but you got to do it.
No, it doesn't sound crazy to me. You know, It really doesn't. It doesn't. You know, I mean, I'm not a runner, you know. Yeah. I did have a little run yesterday because I needed to get somewhere quickly, and I actually quite enjoyed it. So, yeah, I actually felt felt quite exhilarated. The dog was looking at me like, what the hell are you doing? You don't normally do this. But it was really good. But, apart from, the clubs and things which are worldwide, there is this entrepreneurial sort of side of 261, isn't there? So you're not just, in a way, encouraging women to be part of that community, part of those clubs, but you're encouraging them to have their own business by setting up a club.
Well, yeah, it's a nonprofit business, but you're allowed to earn money through a nonprofit.
Yeah.
I mean, and basically, yes. I mean, we want you to create a nonprofit model in your own country, in your own community. And yes, if you can become a club leader, and if you want to charge dues, and as long as you abide by the rules of being non-judgmental and things like that, absolutely you can do that. And we're through Adidas, we're going to be even doing merchandising where you be able to get gear and have it screened for your own club and sell it. Yes, all of these things are quite possible. So we really encourage women to do it either on a part-time thing or even in a full-time way.
Yeah, amazing. So where to from here, Kathrine?
Well, Bev, actually, I am going to settle down and try to write that fourth book. So much has happened on the streets of Boston. So much is happening with 261 Fearless. But a side product of this run, interestingly enough, was the huge interest from the media and the fact that I was actually 70. Mm-hmm. And actually, we are finding that active aging is the fountain of youth. There are real wonderful medical statistics coming out to prove that you not only live longer, but you live better. I really don't care about living longer, but I do want to live as well as I can for as long as I can.
Sure.
And actually, the more you do, the more you can do. And we are pushing back the notion of settling into retirement and slowing down, because people talk, interestingly enough, about aging the way they talked about women 50 years ago. Oh, you shouldn't do that. You're going to hurt something, or you should slow down. You're going to have a heart attack, or, you might wreck your knees or whatever. When in fact, the more you do, the more you can do. The muscle tone needs to be strong. The more running and weight-bearing exercise you do, you prevent osteoporosis. Mm-hmm. You reduce blood pressure problems. Maybe most importantly, cardiovascular disease is actually our number one killer. And if you can keep that blood and heart pumping for a number of minutes every single day, you can reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease by 45%. I mean, it's huge. It's huge. So I'm actually going to be working with Humana and the Rock and Roll Marathons on a new project on active aging. So watch this space. I'll have more information for you next week. But that also will tie in wonderfully with 261, because really the women in the world control usually the health of the family. Mm-hmm. And the women I am now seeing on the streets of Boston, for instance, almost all of those young women are products of a mom who started running, or they ran and they inspired their mom to get fit. So when we go through the next few generations of healthy kids, it's going to be very, very, very interesting to see what happens in the aging process. And it's going to be great seeing older people embracing activity much more.
I never believe that you're too old for anything. Right. So I've had, when I was a personal trainer, some clients would say to me, well, I think I'm doing very well for 50. And I go, get over yourself. I've seen 70-year-olds run marathons, So, and I remember you talked previously to me a few years ago saying that women will take up running at 70 and older. And I think it's never too late to start doing these kinds of things, is it? And your 261 is encouraging that at any age, isn't it?
Absolutely. The body always wants to improve, and the body will always improve. I mean, there have been amazing studies on really bedridden people in their 90s that they got into some kind of weight-bearing exercise, and they improved their muscular strength by like 90%. Huge. The body always responds to stress and recovery, stress and recovery.
Yeah.
And your body regenerates every 7 years. It's in a constant state of regeneration. So it behooves you to regenerate it back stronger and stronger. Yeah, but you talk about those older women. I remember we had a coffee over that. I was really, really impressed with meeting women who were 65, 70, and 75 who were only starting an exercise program. And they were terrific.
Yeah.
And the reason they were terrific in running, I always laughed, is I said, they've got an old body, but they've got new legs. But the reality is it's never too late to be the athlete you wanted to be.
Well, I would just like to say thank you so much for taking the time to not speak to the BBC and do this with me. I am eternally grateful. And, you know, as I said before, you are certainly an inspiration to me, and I know for, you know, probably millions of women around the world. There's an awful lot of us. So thank you very, very much. Now, can you just tell everybody where they can find you on the net?
Okay. First of all, thank you, Beth, for this opportunity. You're doing a great job. I think that you're a brilliant presenter. I think it's going to be such a success.
Thank
and
you.
I'm happy to be a part of it.
Thank you.
Yes, you can find me on 261fearless.org. Or my own personal website, which is marathonwoman.com. And there are ways you can communicate with me through both of those situations. But bear with me, folks. After Boston, I got hundreds and hundreds of emails, especially from relatives I've never heard of.
Oh, really?
It's amazing. I said, who is this? Or there's somebody said, don't you remember me? I sat next to you in second grade. And I don't remember.
That was a wee while ago.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's amazing. But that's great. I mean, how validating to have such great feedback. So, yes.
And it's time for a rest, perhaps. You know, you've
It
been
is.
working towards this for 3 years. So it's time to, you know, maybe rest as much as Kathrine Switzer as possible is, you know, able to do, you know.
Well, you'll be happy to know that I took a 45-minute nap before this broadcast. So I really am finally sleeping. Honestly, the weeks leading into the marathon, I couldn't even sleep. I was getting 2 and 3 hours a night.
Wow.
And I was scared, really scared witless on the start line because I thought, I haven't eaten and I haven't slept. But the training had gone well. And the body must take it from a different bucket at that point. And it was a dream race with a fairy tale ending. So just so you know, I flew into my husband's arms at the finish line for a lingering kiss.
That's lovely. That's so romantic.
Which made the network news.
Oh, I didn't see that one. Maybe I should Google that one. Oh,
well, maybe they cut that on yours.
Oh, no. Well, listen, thanks again, Kathrine. And thank you to everybody who's watched this episode. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, then please share it because other people might like to hear about Kathrine and her work in 261 Fearless. And if you like what I do, then please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And you can find me at bevshort.com. So thanks very much for watching. And thank you again, Kathrine. So goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.